for this process, we're going to need our finish coats. We're going to need our syringes, which is very important because this keeps everything measured correctly. We're going to need a brush, and you make sure this is a craft brush. It's just a nylon brush, very easy to work with. This is a throwaway brush. You have your plate with some aluminum foil on it because this is where we're going to be doing our mixing, is onto this plate. We also have our bubble buster, which you'll see I'll use it, I'll light it, and I'll run it across to get the bubbles out of the finish coat, and a lighter for that. And the most important part of this whole thing, as you noticed, our hand wrapper is still here and our stand is still here, what we used throughout the whole process. But now we're going to bring in another component here, which is our drying machine. We talked about this in the beginning. It's necessary to have a drying machine. If you don't have a drying machine, and I've never done it in 1,000 rods that I've built, is you have to turn it by hand I think it's every 5 minutes, a quarter turn for like 3 hours. That's not real fun. So we buy this little drying machine, which makes it a lot easier. Before you put your finish coat on or even start mixing your finish coat, is to check your rod to make sure, because this is it. You put the finish coat on, that's where the guides are going to end up. So what I like to do is I will make sure that all of my guides are lined up correctly. And what I'll do is first is I'll take it apart and I will line down it, making sure not to touch the threads at any point in time because of the oils in your hands will contaminate your threads. Is to look down the rod to make sure. And how I line things up is I close one eye and I make sure that blank goes down the middle of each ring of that guide. I'll take this section also and I will make sure that that guide is lined up with my reel seat this way. It looks like they've done a good job. Everything looks good. Then I'll take my sections and I'll put it back together, making sure not to touch any of the threads with my hand. I will sight up my rod. Make sure my ferrule is tight. Tightening your ferrule because you don't want that coming loose during the process. So now this rod is ready to put a finish coat on. So the drying machine is a very simple drying machine. This one has the diaphragm. You just stick it in there and it'll turn it. But you make sure whenever you're doing anything that you don't bump any of these guides because you've already looked at it one time. You don't want to have to go back and look at it again. So I'm going to make sure that I don't touch anything or rub anything, and I'm going to stick this rod in the diaphragm, just like that. None of my threads are touching. None of the guides are going to hit anything when they roll. Everything is square. I personally will come back and make sure that my rod doesn't jump out anywhere, so I will strap it down, at least in one spot, and then you can turn the motor on. And you'll see what happens when I turn the motor on. It will start to rotate nice and slowly. Okay? And I want to make sure everything's good. If you get bigger rods in here, a lot of times guys will start taping things down, which is a good practice to do, is I'll take a piece of tape and I'll tape this down. A rod this size, it doesn't really matter because it's not that big. It's a very light rod, but when you start getting into heavier rods, you might want to tape these things down. Some people tape them down so they don't move. From this point, we'll take our plate with our aluminum foil on it. We'll take our finish coat and our brushes, okay? Making sure that you use the hardener on the hardener and the resin on the resin. And it says right on the bottles here, resin and resin. And you want to keep this syringe with this one at all times because if you mix, then it'll harden up and you won't be able to use the syringes any longer. So I always use the light stuff. You can see this stuff is more like water and this one is usually a little thicker. So personally, I like to go with the light stuff first and I'll put that down and then put the heavy stuff on top of it. It mixes easier for me. And you will pull up 2 milliliters and no air bubbles, no nothing. That mark should be on your 2 milliliter mark, as you can see. Maybe not, but I can see it. And I will put that right on this plate, just like that. And the next one is your resin. I will pull 2 milliliters, making sure that there's no air bubbles. I am at 2 milliliters with this one. Same measurement as I did with the other one, pouring it on top of the other one this way. And what you'll notice is you can see the separation in the finish coat at this point in time. One is heavier than the other, one is lighter, so you will see a separation. Always remember to put your caps on everything. Cap on caps, yeah, and then you don't have to worry about things getting knocked over. I've done it before, I know. Okay, so you have your mixture on your plate like this. Personally, I just take my brush and I will fold these things into each other. And you just want to make sure you get a good mixture, moving all the material around into each other. Very similar to this. I've got about 2 minutes worth of mixing there, and it's on the aluminum foil. I'm going to let this sit for a minute, and you'll be able to see some bubbles. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see them here, but I do have some bubbles. And what I can do is I can move that finish coat around this plate, and it'll break down those bubbles. And another trick to do is light your bubble buster. And this bubble buster, if you see how the flame moves this way, because I'm squeezing it, it's called a bubble buster. So you can control the flame where you want the flame. What I'll do is I will come back and I will hit my plate, and I'll try to get some of those bubbles out, and it's kind of cool watching the bubbles break. What I like to do from this point is I put a large amount on my brush, and you can see the bead. And if I don't work it, it'll fall off. See how I'm working? All I'm doing is moving my brush around so it doesn't fall off, right? And then if I don't move my brush, the bead will eventually fall off, but we're not going to let it. We're going to turn the brush and we're going to work that bead. See how I darkened up the thread? Okay. The only way to keep that colored thread is to put a product called color preserver on there. We don't use color preserver because I like to bleed my thread. So you saw it. I got finish coat on there. It's all over the threads. Okay. Now I'm going to come back because I need more finish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another bead, and I'm just going to drop it right next to where I just came off of. And I'm just going to run this brush very lightly over it and move my finish coat. Work that bead. It's called working the bead. And you'll notice you'll get some lighter spots. You know, you want to make the finish coat as evenly as possible. I mean, the drying machine will help you even it out a little bit, but you still have to lay it down pretty even. And it's almost like I'm painting it on, if you haven't noticed. I'm just putting a bead on there, keeping it even with everything, and just kind of dragging the bead and getting the finish coat on the rod. What I like to do, just work from one side to the other with a bead, just like I did all of that. Everything is pretty basically the same. Okay, so I got my bead, and I'm going to run it 1/8 of an inch on the other side of the thread. Okay. Okay, another important part here is you want to get finish coat up underneath that guide. So when it comes around, you kind of have to backfill. Backfill, push, backfill, push, okay? And then you just kind of brush it down and use your bead. There's my, there it is. So, and I will fill in and keeping it nice and flat. And what I'll do is I will work some of the finish coat there, and I'll take my bead and I'll go to the other end and drop my bead, and then run my two beads together. You don't see any ripples in the thread, and the finish coat is on. We don't touch this rod again for another, I don't touch this rod for another 12 hours. I let it rotate on here for probably 4 to 6 hours, turn the motor off, walk away. A lot of people don't even fish their rods for 24 to 48 hours after they're finished. I've seen guys take them out within 24 hours and fish them. It's not going to be a problem, but the longer you let this cure, the better off you're going to be. What I like to do is I'll keep my brush and my finish coat here, and I'll just leave it here, come back in 12 hours and check this. Don't put your finger on there. This particular rod really don't need it too much, but what I'll do is I'll come back with my bubble buster and I'll look, because sometimes you get air bubbles that pop out from underneath the guide feet where you backfilled. You'll see a bubble, right? Or you'll see a bubble here. So what I'll do is I'll come here, nice and easy. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm running a little flame right across the top of my finish coat. and it'll pull out any bubbles that I might have. And I'll do it here, because like I said, you'll get a little bubble or two come out from underneath that foot. Main thing is you have a controlled environment. You don't want cat hair and stuff blowing around, because everything in this room is going to start sucking to this. I like to work in an environment between 60 and 80 degrees. Those are good temperatures to be working in. If it gets cold, sometimes your finish coat clouds up a little bit, or if it's too hot, has a tendency to take longer to set up. So you kind of want a controlled environment here. Okay, now so we've finished. I mean, the finish coat's on. You've seen us go through every step. We appreciate you taking the time. We're just proud and honored to be able to be part of this and go out and go fishing. Thank you. Congratulations, you finished your first custom rod. Myself and my team here at Batson Enterprises want to thank you for joining us, and we hope you have many years of fishing enjoyment and outdoor experiences. And if you ever need to get a hold of us, please contact us at batsonenterprises.com. Thank you.